Marcus walked down the busy city street, his backpack slung over one shoulder and his headphones playing a soft, familiar tune. It was just another ordinary afternoon after school, and the streets were alive with the usual mix of sounds, the distant honking of cars, the chatter of people passing by, and the occasional laughter of children playing nearby. He adjusted his backpack and took a deep breath, feeling the cool breeze brush against his face as he tried to think about the homework he had waiting for him at home. The neighborhood had its usual charm, a mix of old brick buildings and small shops with colorful signs advertising everything from fresh bread to school supplies. Marcus loved walking these streets because there was always something happening if you paid attention. Today, though, his mind was mostly on finishing his assignments and maybe catching up with his friends online later in the evening. As he walked past a small cafe, he noticed the familiar faces of the barista waving at regular customers. He nodded politely but didn't stop. He had no time to linger, yet, even in his hurry, his eyes caught a glimpse of movement up ahead. Something was slightly unusual, a small figure struggling near the curb. Marcus slowed down slightly, curiosity nudging him forward. A woman, probably in her late 50s or early 60s, was standing near a short flight of stairs that led up to an apartment building. She had several grocery bags in her hands, and it was clear she was having a hard time balancing them all. One of the bags was tipping over, and a few cans rolled onto the ground, making a soft clattering sound that caught Marcus's attention. He paused for a moment, almost debating whether to continue on his way or to step forward and help. Most days, he might have ignored it, assuming someone else would lend a hand, but today felt different. Something about the way she struggled, the slight tremble in her hands, and the worried look on her face made it impossible to walk past. Marcus approached her slowly, trying not to startle her. "Excuse me, ma'am, do you need some help with those?" he asked politely. His voice carried a mix of genuine concern and hesitation. He wasn't sure if she would accept help from a stranger, but he felt a quiet urgency, a pull in his heart that told him he should. The woman looked up, her eyes widening slightly as if surprised by the offer. For a moment, Marcus thought she might refuse, but then she gave a small, grateful smile and nodded. "Oh, thank you, young man, I could really use some help," she said softly. Her voice was gentle but tired, carrying the weight of years that had made simple tasks more difficult than they used to be. As Marcus took a bag from her hands, he noticed more details. The slight stiffness in her movements, the careful way she balanced herself on the steps, and the quiet patience she showed despite the challenge. It made him realize that life could be hard in ways people often don't see. He felt a mixture of empathy and respect, wanting to do more than just carry her groceries, wanting to make the moment a little easier for her. The city around them continued its usual pace, cars driving by, pedestrians walking with their own thoughts, but for Marcus, time seemed to slow just a little. He focused on the simple act of holding the bag and helping her step up carefully. There was no rush, no pressure, just the small connection of human kindness. It was a quiet, ordinary moment, yet it already felt significant in a way he couldn't explain. As he followed her up the final steps, he noticed the way she adjusted her posture, trying to steady herself with a hand on the railing. Marcus couldn't help but feel a sense of admiration for her resilience. Even though he was only helping with a few bags, the effort she had made to live independently despite her struggles inspired him more than he expected. By the time they reached her door, Marcus was a little out of breath, but he felt a warm sense of satisfaction. It was a small act, but it felt meaningful. It reminded him that life is made up of countless small moments, some of which can be extraordinary if we pay attention and step in when needed. The woman opened her door and invited him in briefly to put the bags down. She thanked him sincerely, and Marcus felt a surprising sense of pride mixed with humility. It was the kind of moment that made him realize that even ordinary days could bring unexpected opportunities to make a difference. As he stepped back out onto the street, preparing to continue his walk home, Marcus felt lighter, not physically, but emotionally. The city around him was still busy and loud, but his perspective had shifted. What had started as a normal, uneventful afternoon had turned into something meaningful, something that reminded him of the importance of noticing the people around you, of stepping in when you can, and of understanding that even small gestures can leave a lasting impact. Marcus stood there for a moment, frozen in thought, looking at the woman struggling with her groceries. It was such a small scene, so ordinary at first glance, yet something inside him stirred, a quiet voice urging him to step closer. Most of the time, he would have kept walking, telling himself that someone else would surely help, or that it wasn't his problem. but today felt different. There was a weight in the air, not heavy, but noticeable, almost like the city itself had paused for a brief moment to hold its breath. He watched her shift her weight from one foot to the other, the way her hands trembled slightly as she tried to steady the bags, and the faint look of worry in her eyes. He imagined what it would be like to carry all of that by yourself, to worry about dropping something, or worse, to fall. His heart tightened, and without really thinking, he took a small step forward, then another, the rhythm of his sneakers against the pavement echoing softly as he closed the distance. "Hey, do you need some help with those?" he asked, his voice a mixture of nervousness and determination. He didn't know why he felt so compelled to say it, but the words had escaped naturally, almost as if they had been waiting inside him for this very moment. The woman looked up, startled at first, and then her expression softened, a small, grateful smile appeared on her face, and she nodded, almost shyly. "Oh, yes, please. That would be wonderful," she replied. Her voice was gentle, calm, but it carried a quiet exhaustion, as if this simple task had been weighing on her for a while. Marcus felt a strange mixture of emotions, pride, hesitation, and a sudden sense of purpose. He wasn't doing this for recognition or praise, he knew that, but it was also more than just helping. It felt like a decision he had to make, a choice that mattered in that very instant. He stepped closer and reached for the bag that looked heaviest, feeling its weight settle into his hands, and realized that it was heavier than he had imagined. The sudden strain made him take a sharp breath, but he didn't let go. He could see relief spreading across her face, and that small gesture of gratitude made every ounce of effort worthwhile. As he helped her step carefully toward the sidewalk, he noticed the way she moved, slowly, deliberately, yet with a quiet strength that suggested she had learned to manage her challenges over time. Marcus realized that helping her wasn't just about carrying bags, it was about giving her a moment of ease, a chance to breathe, and maybe even a little dignity. He thought about how many people walk past every day without noticing, without caring, and he felt quietly proud that he had chosen to act differently. For a brief moment, the noise of the city seemed to fade, the cars and chatter becoming a distant hum as Marcus focused entirely on the woman in front of him. He guided her gently, making sure she didn't stumble, and as they moved together, there was a subtle, unspoken connection forming, a tiny bond between two strangers brought together by circumstance. Marcus wondered if she had noticed him at all, or if he was just another young person passing through her life, but the warmth in her smile told him he had made a difference. He thought about his own life, about the times he had been helped by others without even realizing how much it mattered, and it struck him how powerful even a small act of kindness could be. Not every moment needed to be extraordinary to matter. Sometimes, the simplest choices carried the greatest weight. Marcus felt that he was part of something larger than himself, something invisible but real, a ripple of goodness moving quietly through the world. When they finally reached the bottom of the steps, Marcus held the bag firmly, waiting for the woman to take it from him. She looked at him, her eyes soft with gratitude, and whispered, "Thank you, you didn't have to, but you did." The words were simple, but they filled him with a warmth he hadn't expected, and he realized that helping her wasn't just easing her burden, it had lifted something in him too. Marcus smiled back, shrugging slightly, pretending it was no big deal, even though inside, he felt a quiet pride. He had made a choice in that ordinary moment to step forward, and it had turned into something meaningful. He understood, more than ever, that life often presents these little crossroads, moments when we can choose to act with kindness or simply walk away. Today, he had chosen kindness, and it already felt like the right decision. Marcus carefully adjusted the grocery bag in his hands, feeling the weight of it settle as he prepared to walk alongside the woman. He noticed the subtle tension in her posture, the way she held herself slightly rigid, and realized that the simple act of accepting help could be harder than he had imagined. It wasn't just about carrying the groceries, it was about trust, about letting a stranger step into her space, into her day. "Here, I've got this," Marcus said gently, trying to make his voice sound as normal as possible, though inside, his heart was racing. He didn't want to scare her or make her feel uncomfortable. She looked at him again, her eyes meeting his, and for the first time, he noticed a spark of surprise mixed with relief. "Thank you, that's very kind of you," she said softly. Her voice was calm, but there was an unmistakable note of gratitude in it. As they moved slowly toward the sidewalk, Marcus began to notice little things about her, the way she adjusted the strap of her bag, the careful steps she took on the uneven pavement, and the faint smile she gave him when he asked, "Are you sure you don't mind me helping?" She shook her head lightly and replied, "Not at all. It's rare to meet someone willing to help without expecting anything." Those words struck Marcus unexpectedly, making him pause for a second. He realized that even in this small moment, their interaction was about more than groceries. It was about human connection, about showing respect and care for someone else, about letting someone know they weren't alone. Marcus felt a quiet pride but also a sense of responsibility. He wanted to do it right, to make her feel safe, valued, and supported. They walked together in silence for a few steps, and Marcus noticed her glance toward the street corner, where cars passed by and pedestrians hurried along. Everyone seemed lost in their own worlds, moving quickly without noticing each other. It made him feel grateful that he had taken a moment to pause, to slow down, to really see someone who needed him. "Do you live nearby?" Marcus asked casually, trying to start a conversation without overstepping. She nodded, "Yes, just up the block, in the apartments above the little grocery store," she replied. Her tone was soft, but there was a faint weariness, as if the day had already taken a toll on her. Marcus nodded, understanding without needing to say anything more. He could feel her quiet strength, the way she managed life despite her limitations, and it inspired him. As they reached a safer spot on the sidewalk, Marcus gently shifted the bag to balance it better. She watched him carefully, and for the first time, Marcus noticed a subtle warmth in her eyes, a recognition of his effort, a silent acknowledgement that she appreciated more than just the weight he was carrying. She offered a small smile, and he felt a surprising sense of connection, a brief but meaningful bond forming between them. "I'm Marcus," he said finally, offering his name with a small smile. She returned it. "I'm Mrs. Thompson," she replied. Her voice carried a quiet dignity that made Marcus respect her even more. It was one of those moments when strangers become humanized, when faces and names are no longer just passing details but real people with stories and lives worth noticing. They walked the final few steps toward her building, Marcus making sure she didn't stumble on the curb. She laughed softly when one of the bags shifted slightly, and he steadied it immediately. "You're very careful," she said, smiling. Marcus shrugged, trying to play it off casually. But inside, he felt proud. He realized that kindness wasn't just about helping physically, it was about paying attention, noticing the little things, and acting with patience. Finally, they reached her door, and Marcus set the bag down gently. She looked at him again, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you, you didn't have to do this, but you did," she said. Her words were simple, yet they carried so much meaning. Marcus smiled, feeling a warmth in his chest he hadn't expected. He knew that this brief interaction had already become more significant than either of them realized. A small but powerful moment of human connection that would linger long after the groceries were put away. Marcus followed Mrs. Thompson into her apartment building, his hand still gripping the grocery bag he had carried for her. He could feel a subtle shift in the air, a quiet sense of calm settling between them. It was as if the brief walk up the steps had opened a door, not just to her apartment, but to a small, unexpected connection between two strangers. As they moved slowly toward the elevator, Marcus noticed the careful way she balanced herself, occasionally holding onto the railing for support. He realized how much courage it must take just to manage these everyday tasks, and it made him respect her even more. She wasn't just a woman struggling with groceries, she was someone who faced challenges every day and handled them with patience and dignity. "You know," she said softly, glancing at him with a hint of a smile, "it's rare to meet young people like you nowadays, people who stop and really care." Her voice was gentle, but her words carried weight, and Marcus felt a warmth spread through his chest. It wasn't something he was used to hearing, and it made him pause for a moment, considering how small gestures could have a big impact. Marcus shrugged slightly, unsure how to respond. I don't know. "I thought you might need help," he said, feeling a little self-conscious, but she shook her head, her smile widening just enough to show sincerity. "It's more than that," she said quietly. "It's the thought, the care, the attention, that matters more than anything." He felt a strange connection in that moment, a feeling he couldn't quite explain. It wasn't friendship, not yet, but it was something deeper, a mutual recognition of humanity, a silent acknowledgement that they were both navigating life's challenges in their own ways. Marcus realized that helping someone wasn't always about the physical act. sometimes, it was about being present, noticing, and sharing a small piece of your time and attention. They reached her apartment door, and she turned to him, holding it open with one hand while he carried the bag. "Here we are," she said softly, and for a brief moment, Marcus noticed something in her eyes, a mix of gratitude, relief, and connection. He realized that this simple interaction had transformed into something more meaningful than either of them expected, a moment that went beyond words or gestures. As they set the bag down inside, Mrs. Thompson motioned for him to sit for a moment. Though Marcus hesitated, unsure if he should, she insisted gently, "Just for a minute. It's nice to have someone to talk to." He took a seat across from her, and suddenly, the room felt warmer, more personal, as if the space itself had softened to welcome their interaction. They began to talk, quietly at first, sharing small pieces of their lives. Marcus told her about school and his friends, while she spoke about her daily routines, the challenges she faced, and the small joys she found in life. Neither of them spoke for long stretches at a time, yet the silence felt comfortable, a natural pause that allowed them both to feel understood. Marcus noticed how her eyes lit up when she talked about her love for reading, and she noticed the careful attention he gave to every word. It wasn't forced or artificial. It was genuine, a rare moment of mutual understanding. In that simple exchange, Marcus realized that helping someone wasn't only about action, it was about listening, noticing, and being present. She wasn't just grateful for his hands carrying the groceries, she was grateful for his attention, his presence, his willingness to connect without judgment or expectation. By the time they finished putting the groceries away, Marcus felt a quiet satisfaction. He hadn't expected this interaction to feel so meaningful, yet here he was, sitting in her apartment, realizing that they had shared something rare, something human and honest, that couldn't be measured or explained easily. As he stood to leave, Mrs. Thompson smiled warmly. "Thank you again, for more than just the groceries," she said softly. Her words echoed in his mind as he stepped back out into the hallway. Marcus realized that the small act of helping someone had grown into something deeper, a moment of connection that neither of them would forget. For Marcus, the ordinary day had shifted into something extraordinary, a day that started with a simple decision and became a memory, a story of empathy, presence, and the quiet, unexpected power of human connection. As Marcus helped Mrs. Thompson arrange the last of the groceries on her kitchen counter, he noticed something in her expression that made him pause. There was a flicker of familiarity in her eyes, subtle but undeniable. She looked at him longer than before, her gaze softening, as if she were trying to place him. Marcus felt a little uneasy, unsure if he had said or done something wrong. But then she spoke, her voice gentle and deliberate. "Marcus, is that really you?" He blinked, surprised. Yes. "I'm Marcus," he said cautiously, unsure what she meant. She smiled, though it wasn't the same simple smile from earlier. This one held a trace of nostalgia, of memory surfacing from somewhere deep in time. "I remember you. From years ago," she said, her voice trembling slightly with emotion. "You were just a little boy back then, helping out at the community center. You helped me once, long ago, and I never forgot it." Marcus froze for a moment, his mind racing. He had volunteered at that local community program as a kid, carrying boxes, helping the elderly, and sometimes just listening to stories from the people in the neighborhood. He had no idea that one of those moments had stayed with someone for so many years. I don't remember exactly," he said, feeling a strange mix of shock and humility. "I helped a lot of people back then." Mrs. Thompson shook her head gently. "No, it wasn't just anyone. It was you, Marcus," she said, her eyes shining with gratitude. "You were kind, patient, and genuinely caring. And that day, when I needed a little help, you made a huge difference. I never forgot it." She paused for a moment, as if reliving the memory, "And now here you are, years later, helping me again, without even realizing who I am." Marcus felt a rush of emotions, amazement, surprise, and a deep sense of humility. He couldn't believe that a child's small act of kindness had been remembered for all these years, and now, fate had brought him back to help her once again. It was almost surreal, a reminder that even small gestures can have long-lasting effects that we may never fully understand. He looked at her, trying to find the right words, but they felt insufficient. "Wow. I had no idea. I'm honored," he said finally, his voice caught slightly in his throat. He realized that helping people wasn't just about the moment, it was about creating ripples, effects that could continue quietly in someone else's life for years, sometimes without ever knowing it. Mrs. Thompson smiled softly, reaching out to touch his arm lightly. "You've always had a kind heart, Marcus," she said. "I guess some things never change." Her words weren't just a compliment, they were a recognition, a passing of trust and respect from someone whose life he had impacted. Marcus felt a warmth spread through him, a quiet pride that wasn't about himself, but about the way kindness travels through time. They spent a few more minutes talking about that day years ago, and Marcus listened intently as she described it in detail. He imagined a young version of himself, carrying a box of supplies, trying to help a nervous woman navigate the steps and the small hurdles of the community center. It was incredible to think that something he had done almost without thought had remained vivid in someone else's memory for so long. He realized that life has a way of connecting people in mysterious patterns, that acts of compassion can echo far beyond the initial moment, changing lives silently, invisibly, and sometimes returning years later in unexpected ways. Helping Mrs. Thompson today wasn't just a random act, it was part of a bigger story, a continuation of a bond that had already begun years ago. As Marcus prepared to leave her apartment, he felt a mix of awe and gratitude. This ordinary day, which had started with a simple decision to help a woman with groceries, had transformed into something extraordinary, a reunion with the past, a confirmation that small acts matter, and a reminder that kindness is never wasted. Mrs. Thompson walked him to the door, her smile warm and steady. "Thank you again, Marcus," she said softly. "You've always been special, and today, you've reminded me of that again." Marcus nodded, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. He stepped out into the street, the afternoon sunlight hitting his face, and realized that even in the smallest moments, life has a way of surprising us, rewarding kindness, and connecting us in ways we can't always predict. Marcus walked out of Mrs. Thompson's apartment, closing the door gently behind him, and paused for a moment on the quiet hallway. His mind was buzzing, replaying the events of the afternoon like a movie. The ordinary walk home from school had turned into something far more meaningful than he could have imagined. It wasn't just the groceries he had carried, it was the small, unexpected reunion. The realization that years ago, a tiny act of kindness had stayed alive in someone's memory. As he stepped outside into the warm sunlight, Marcus felt a strange mix of pride, humility, and awe. He thought about the little boy he had been at the community center, helping anyone who needed it without expecting anything in return. He had never considered that one of those moments could echo years later, returning in a way that felt almost magical. He realized that life had a way of weaving threads between people, sometimes invisibly, creating connections that only reveal themselves later. He walked slowly, feeling the rhythm of his footsteps on the sidewalk, thinking about how simple it had been to make a difference. It wasn't complicated, it didn't require money, special skills, or a grand gesture. All it had required was noticing, stepping forward, and offering help without hesitation. And yet, that simple choice had changed the course of someone else's day, and even, in some ways, left a lasting mark on their life. Marcus couldn't stop thinking about Mrs. Thompson's words, "You've always had a kind heart. Some things never change." There was a quiet truth in that statement, a reminder that character and compassion aren't measured in grand achievements, but in consistent, small acts, in the choices we make when no one is watching. He realized that kindness, once given, doesn't vanish, it lingers in memory, shaping lives in ways we can't always see. He replayed the scene in his mind where she had paused, staring at him with recognition, and how her smile had shifted from simple gratitude to something deeper, something that spoke of years of remembering, of silently holding on to a moment that mattered. It was incredible to think that he had unknowingly been part of a story that had been waiting to connect again, a reminder that even ordinary people can create extraordinary ripples in the lives of others. Marcus slowed as he approached a park bench, deciding to sit for a few minutes. He looked around at the bustling city, the people walking by, each caught up in their own world, and wondered how many unnoticed acts of kindness happened every day, how many moments of care, attention, or empathy went unseen, but quietly changed someone's life forever. He thought about his own life, the people who had helped him, the teachers, neighbors, and strangers who had offered a hand, a smile, or a few words of encouragement. It all felt connected now, as if there was a pattern he hadn't understood before. He realized that helping others wasn't about recognition or reward, it was about understanding that life is full of these moments, small, fleeting, yet powerful, moments that can leave a lasting mark. Marcus felt a sense of calm wash over him, as if the weight of the ordinary day had transformed into something extraordinary. He thought about how easy it could have been to walk past Mrs. Thompson, to pretend not to notice her struggle. He shuddered at the thought, knowing that one simple decision, to pause, to offer help, had led to all of this, a ripple that had returned to him in a way he couldn't have imagined. It reminded him that every small act matters, even if its impact isn't visible immediately. Marcus stood up, brushing off his jeans, and continued walking home. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows on the street, and the city felt alive in a new way, more connected, more human. He smiled to himself, understanding something profound. Kindness isn't just about others, it changes us too. It shapes the way we see the world, teaches us empathy, and reminds us that even in an ordinary day, extraordinary things can happen if we choose to care. As he neared his home, Marcus felt lighter, not in body but in spirit. He knew that the memory of today, of helping Mrs. Thompson and discovering the long-standing impact of his past kindness, would stay with him forever, a quiet lesson in the power of empathy, the importance of noticing, and the incredible way small acts can echo through time. And in that moment, Marcus silently promised himself that he would keep choosing kindness, no matter how small or ordinary the moment might seem. Marcus followed Mrs. Thompson to her apartment door, the last of the grocery bags neatly stacked beside her kitchen counter. There was a quiet comfort in the air, a sense of completion, but also a lingering energy from the connection they had formed. The earlier tension and uncertainty had transformed into warmth and trust, something neither of them had expected when Marcus first stepped forward to help. Mrs. Thompson turned toward him, a soft smile on her face, her eyes reflecting gratitude and something deeper, appreciation not just for the help, but for his presence, for the way he had paused to notice her. "Marcus," she said gently, "thank you, truly, for everything today." Her voice was steady but carried emotion, and Marcus felt a lump form in his throat. He realized that sometimes words were not just expressions. They were bridges, carrying emotions that actions alone could not fully convey. He shrugged slightly, feeling a little self-conscious. "It's really nothing, Mrs. Thompson," he replied, though inside he felt the quiet pride of knowing he had made a difference. She shook her head, her gaze lingering on him. "No, it is something, Marcus. It's more than the groceries. It's the time, the care, the thoughtfulness. You remind me that kindness still exists, even in moments we don't expect." Marcus felt warmth spread through him, a gentle reassurance that what he had done mattered, not because of recognition, but because of the impact it had on someone else. It was a lesson he felt deep in his chest, that compassion and attention to others could create ripples, silent but powerful, moving farther than he could imagine. He realized that the true reward of helping someone was never visible in immediate thanks. It was in the change it made inside them, the comfort it brought, and the memory it left behind. Mrs. Thompson paused, resting her hand lightly on his shoulder, and Marcus noticed a faint tremble, not from weakness, but from the emotion of gratitude. She smiled warmly. "You've always had a kind heart, Marcus. I've never forgotten it. And today, seeing you help me again, I feel reminded of how rare that is." Marcus's heart swelled at her words, feeling a quiet sense of fulfillment he hadn't expected when he had left school that afternoon. He glanced around the small apartment, noticing the personal touches she had carefully arranged, photographs on the wall, books neatly stacked, a small vase of fresh flowers on the counter. He realized that this was a home she had built with care, yet the world could make everyday tasks challenging for her. It made him feel grateful that he could ease even a small part of her day, even for a few moments. Marcus finally took a step back, preparing to leave. "Well, I should get going," he said softly, feeling a mix of humility and pride. Mrs. Thompson nodded, her eyes softening. "Take care of yourself, Marcus," she said, "and remember, what you do, even the smallest gestures, can mean the world to someone." Her words lingered in the air, almost like a gentle reminder, something he knew he would carry with him forever. He smiled one last time, feeling a quiet sense of connection and closure. "I will, Mrs. Thompson. And thank you, too," he said sincerely. His voice carried a weight that wasn't just politeness. It was acknowledgement of the bond they had formed, a recognition that their brief interaction had been meaningful for both of them. As Marcus stepped out of her apartment and into the warm afternoon light, he felt the world around him seem a little brighter, a little more alive. The city noises, the distant chatter of pedestrians, and the honking of cars seemed less chaotic and more harmonious somehow, as if the simple act of helping someone had shifted his perspective, reminding him of the quiet power of human connection. He walked away slowly, glancing back one last time to see Mrs. Thompson standing in her doorway, smiling softly and waving, and Marcus waved back, feeling a sense of fulfillment that went beyond the ordinary. Today had started as a typical day, just another walk home from school, but it had turned into a meaningful story, a moment of genuine connection and shared humanity that would stay with him forever. As he continued down the street, Marcus reflected on what he had learned, and he felt certain of one thing: the world is shaped not just by grand gestures or big events, but by small acts of kindness, moments of empathy, and the courage to step forward when someone needs help. And in that moment, Marcus promised himself that he would continue to notice, continue to act, and continue to connect, because it is in these moments that life becomes extraordinary. Marcus walked down the quiet city street, the afternoon sun casting long shadows on the pavement. He felt lighter somehow, not because of the groceries he had carried, but because of the experience he had just lived through. The ordinary day that had begun like any other had transformed into a story he would carry with him forever, a story about kindness, connection, and the small choices that can change lives. As he moved along, he thought about Mrs. Thompson, about the way she had looked at him with recognition and gratitude, about the way her eyes had softened when she remembered him from years ago. Marcus realized that life has a strange, beautiful way of connecting people, sometimes years apart, sometimes in ways we cannot plan or predict, yet, it all begins with a small choice. A moment when we decide to step forward instead of walking past, to notice someone instead of ignoring them, to care when it is easier not to. He remembered the way her smile had lit up her face, the quiet appreciation in her voice, and he thought about the ripple effect of kindness, how even small actions can echo far beyond the moment, unseen yet powerful. Marcus had carried a bag of groceries, but he had given her something more: attention, presence, and care, and she had reminded him that such gestures are remembered far longer than we imagine. Marcus also thought about himself, about the little boy he had been at the community center, volunteering without expectation, unaware that his actions mattered so much. He realized that the kindness he had shown years ago had returned to him, not as a reward, but as a lesson, a gentle reminder that compassion leaves traces, and that our choices, no matter how small, can create stories that last for years. He walked past familiar streets, noticing the people around him, each caught up in their own lives, and he felt a quiet determination rising in him. Marcus knew that life was filled with opportunities to help, to notice, to connect, if only we take the time. He understood that heroism doesn't always mean grand gestures or fame. It is in the small, thoughtful actions, the quiet decisions to help when no one is watching, and the courage to care in a world that often moves too fast. As he reached the park where children were playing and parents watched from benches, Marcus paused for a moment, looking around at the life around him, the laughter of kids, the soft murmur of conversation, and the rhythmic passing of footsteps reminded him that life is a series of moments, ordinary yet extraordinary if we are present. He smiled, thinking of the lesson Mrs. Thompson had unintentionally taught him, that connection, empathy, and kindness are not only gifts to others but also to ourselves. He remembered the words she had said: even the smallest gestures can mean the world, and he realized how true they were. Every act of care, every moment spent helping, listening, or noticing someone, contributes to a world that is better, warmer, and more human. Marcus felt a surge of hope, knowing that he could be part of that change, one small act at a time, and that even ordinary days could become extraordinary stories of human connection. As he continued walking, Marcus made a quiet promise to himself: to continue helping, to continue noticing, and to continue acting with kindness, not for recognition or reward, but because it matters, because it shapes the world in ways we cannot always see, and because it leaves memories that last. He felt empowered, knowing that every day held the possibility of such moments, moments where ordinary actions create extraordinary impact. By the time Marcus reached home, the sky was turning a soft shade of orange and pink, signaling the end of the day. He paused at his doorstep, thinking about how life had given him a small, unforgettable story to carry forward, a story about a young teen, a disabled woman, and the power of noticing, caring, and stepping forward. It was a story that reminded him, and everyone who might hear it, that kindness is never wasted, and that sometimes, the smallest choices leave the largest footprints. And with that thought, Marcus stepped inside, ready to continue his life, forever changed by a single, ordinary afternoon, carrying with him a lesson that would last a lifetime, that true compassion, empathy, and attention can transform both the giver and the receiver, and that every day offers a chance to make a difference, no matter how small it may seem.